trying to just make a point.
Sure.
Significant.
And we're on. And I'll go get your information. We're last.
You gotta change the mode because it's on Celsius. Say F. Okay. Just
Mr. Dyer, this is to check the count, so.
Oh,
I'm like, see, I'm not doing it right, it's low.
am I normal?
well, it's because you gotta be right in front of
You gotta be close, like within 2 inches.
97.5.
Yeah.
Close enough.
98.1.
I'm more normal than you are.
All right, John.
Thank you.
Yeah. 98.1.
98.9.
97.9.
Oh, 98.2 earlier. Cool.
Or David. Oh. 97.5. You're the coolest yet.
Yeah. More cool.
Johnny Cool right there.
Okay.
You want me to...
I was
Dave, it's
right
good.
there.
Well, you gotta be within, like, probably about a foot. So, that's really cool. Did you see how they were proposing using drones to do that? Because they have those heat-seeking drones that can sense, like, higher heat signatures, and they can tell that people are hot. Yeah. Oh, I appreciate it. Extension for her patio, you know, only about a brick or two out, and then concrete it so she can put her grill on it. She needs an extension.
Leroy, can we suspend the hot tax retroactively to January 1st?
I'd like to go back and just suspend it because
It says, she says one of the things we can do is suspend it,
There's
okay?
a girl,
Can,
This is spending meaning like what? So
in other words, not charge it for the months of January, February, and March, and refund the $300 that's been paid.
that's an option up there.
So I suggest that, as suspending it. Now, he's going to have to deal with the state, but if we suspend it, he's not going to owe it, if we can do it retroactively.
Correct. Correct. And she'll be on the line.
Good, we can ask her.
Yeah, I think that should be one of the three things you do is three options.
Okay.
Look at a grant or a loan.
Yeah. That makes good sense. I don't like the idea of using that money to get grants.
we had an alternate school that it's supposed to go to. Campus.
Is she going to call in?
She is.
Hello.
Oh, pretty good. Hi, Jessica.
I'm all right. Good evening. I guess it is just afternoon, right? That guy, you know. Doing well, sir.
Started from here.
Well, it will, I have to start it on the actual computer I did, I have to start, but I'm just waiting to go. Any water?
Good, thank you.
Water?
No, thanks. I got tea.
Just guzzled one on my way from my last job.
get up and leave, if I were to.
It's over.
That's good, Tom, not too far. Yeah, like my grandfather said, sometimes my things need to go.
Good afternoon, Deborah.
A little bit later, somebody need to go.
Deborah, good
A little
afternoon.
bit later, somebody says, you go, I am.
I think when the mayor comes on though, I do have one citizen comment.
Okay.
Um,
To read or?
Yeah.
Are you gonna read it?
I can. Mr. Iltis asked if I would read it, or if I didn't want to read it, that you could read it, Paul. So,
Be happy to, okay.
you know, you want to read it or you want me to read it?
I'm his rep, I'll read it if you want me to.
Okay, I've read it. There you go.
I better pre-read it.
My guy stopped sending them to me. He said I quack too much.
No, this is not, that's not. This one is.
You are winding down, aren't you?
Yes.
And when I put
We are
out,
winding.
We are winding down.
Wow, I think.
I think so. Depends how this goes.
y'all winding down, we're winding up. And I think, and what I put before y'all, the two pieces of paper, which, I didn't send in to Sheena or Mayor.
Please enter your access code followed by the pound
Because she doesn't have it.
to enable audio. The organizer has not yet started the meeting. You will be placed on hold until an organizer starts the go-to meeting.
You just started the meeting? That's okay, it's on. I mean,
Hey, Chief, will you let Mr. Binford in, please?
Hello there, everybody.
Howdy, howdy, I think you're over there.
Hello, I'm the lone wolf.
You and,
Black sheep.
you and
I
Leroy.
still have to do that, but
You good?
I'd like this.
Oh, okay. And I guess we'll get back to you on then, she's got to sign off. That is two sheets of paper that the mayor asked me to hand out. And it's in pertaining to, I think, the hotel motel tax.
Yeah. All this is third. There y'all.
Good afternoon.
He pays us and he pays the state.
Is the state 6% also?
Yes. We can go up to 7. We are lower than everybody else.
He doesn't have it. No.
What he charges is real.
Well, he charges, right, that's what I'm saying, he doesn't pay it.
Yeah,
It's
customer.
12, he charges $100 plus 12.
It's a basic
So I mean,
tax.
Well, he charges $100 plus 8.25 plus 6 plus
well,
6.
yeah. But what I'm saying, that's why you know why they can get away with that, don't you? Think about it. When you go to, let's just say you go to Dallas or something,
That's how they pay.
and you look at it, you say, my God, get that tax on you, then you come home. You're not a rep.
Do you mind doing
If,
that information?
You're the
If
only
residents had to pay their own something, there
Okay,
wouldn't be
we'll
that
have the
high.
pastors come back.
Yeah.
Like down at Port Isabel, South Padre Island, that's how they run the city.
question on the cities,
Hello?
on the cities. We can hear you.
Hello?
On the cities.
I'm ready. All right. Are we ready to start?
Yes.
So anything after, anything before April 20th, that's going to, that's just going to be on here, and that's also in the back after the veterans.
You guys ready?
Yes.
All right, let's start. Meeting called to order at
Wait 1 second.
3. Okay.
Hang on 1 second, I'm sorry, my computer went off. Okay, I'm recording now. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead. Go ahead.
All right, guys, how you doing? We're calling this meeting to order at 3:03. Let's do roll call, please, starting with Mr. Glenn. I'm here. Goody. Who?
District 2 President.
I'm going to do 3 and
I'm sorry, who is this?
Could you please put your telephone on mute so we don't hear your side conversations? Thank you. District 3,
District
President?
3 here.
District 4.
Present.
District 5, present.
All right, well, I'm here. Thank you. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge
Pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
United States of America.
of the United States and to the republic
One nation.
that under God,
Justice for all.
honor,
Pledge allegiance to thee. One state, under God, one indivisible.
Hey, thank you. Who is giving our invitation today?
I'm going to be doing it, Paul Carey.
Thank you.
Dear Lord, we thank you for today. We thank you for this opportunity to serve the citizens of Castroville and to meet the needs of those that we serve. We pray, Lord, that you would give us guidance, instruction, wisdom, and resolve. We pray, Lord, that you would enable us to communicate well and to effectively meet the needs that we face here today. These things we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Paul.
Amen. Thank you. Okay. Citizen comments, please state your name and address. Do we have any comments?
I have a written comment from Jerome Iltis. I don't have his address here, but it's on Washington Street. And he writes,
One.
"Good afternoon, council, mayor, staff, and citizens of Castroville. If you will indulge me for a few moments, I would like to comment on several observations I recently made. I've noticed that it seems like a lot of time and effort is spent to demean and belittle the mayor of Castroville for her efforts at fulfilling the desires of the citizens of Castroville for some much overdue change. Instead of spending time corralling her and hindering her efforts, why not assist her in accomplishing the goals that were imposed upon her by the taxpayers at the last election? It seems that visibility and transparency are bad words, since her research into the past resolutions and ordinance for the sake of clarity and understanding were frowned upon. The level of frustration that the mayor must be experiencing is beyond comprehension. As an example, the mayor wanted to spend some taxpayer funds to research the issue and history of the Castroville Municipal Airport, but was thwarted based on necessity or lack thereof of cost to accomplish that feat. As a result, a solid foundation of history and current state of affairs regarding the airport will continue to surface. Yet, to several council members, it seems perfectly justifiable to spend those funds not to produce anything positive for the citizens, but to further corral, demean, belittle, and hinder any progress that the mayor may make in fulfilling her mission to represent those that elected her. I ask each and every one of those involved in placing roadblocks in the mayor's path to name a single proposal that you have presented to fulfill the citizens' concerns. I firmly question if you are even aware of the citizens' concerns. When have you, any of you, surveyed the citizens of Castroville or conducted a town hall meeting to address the citizens and ascertain their wants and needs? Conversely, it seems that you find it very easy to take action to increase the cost via taxes and utility rates. It also is befuddling to me how we can continue funding entities, i.e. the airport, without any vision of ever realizing any return on investment to the taxpayers. Quite ironical, don't you think? I've spent time talking to the mayor in the past and in Meet the Candidates Forum. She is the only person
There's a lot of interference. Someone's phone.
that I know that has communicated any semblance of coherent plan for this city of Castroville. Many of the remaining members' only plans seem to be ridding our city of a duly elected mayor, a mayor who reflects and wants the needs of the citizens whom she was elected by. How can anyone condemn her for those efforts? One possible solution is to pass an ordinance that totally reverses some of the constraints placed upon her regarding budgetary issues and what she may deem fiscally irresponsible spending by any entity at City Hall. This is just one issue plaguing City Hall. Why not remove the leash from her neck in the form of restrictive ordinance and allow her to implement her plan? To date, it seems that the politics emulating from City Hall have been an abject failure with no change in sight, no plans no proposals, absolutely nothing observable. The people of the city have been shouting for change, but deaf ears hear not. That's the end of the message.
Thank you. Are there any more comments? Good. All right, the consent agenda. Do I have a motion? Do I have discussion?
I have no observations or changes.
Anyone else? Do I have a motion?
I move we accept the minutes for both meetings as currently written.
Second?
Thank you. Thank you. So we have Mr. Dyer and Mr. Carey seconded.
Correct.
All right, let's go to the audit presentation and accept it.
We need to hold a vote. We need to vote on the motion.
I'm sorry.
We need a vote on the motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's go to the 2019 annual audit presentation and acceptance. And that is Kim Roach.
Jill?
She's not present in the room.
Okay.
Can we, Mr. Benford go first and we'll switch?
Has she called in?
Just open the microphone.
Hey, Mayor, can we go ahead and have Mr. Benford present, and then after that, it'll be the auditor?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I thought Mr. Binford was supposed to be first. Okay, Clay, it's all yours, which is item 4.
9.
Consider and take appropriate action. Sorry? Consider and take appropriate action on an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Castroville, Texas, authorizing the execution of an escrow agreement and utility service agreement relating to Alsatian Oaks development and other matters connected therewith. Good to see you, Clay.
Likewise, Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you for having me today. Clay Benford representing the city special counsel. Today is I would say a monumental event regarding this development and the contracts that are placed before the council today. This is an ordinance authorizing the approval of 2 agreements. One is an escrow agreement between the city, a third-party escrow agent, and the developer of the Alsatian Oaks development, whereby the developer delivers into escrow money to be used to improve the off-site infrastructure for water and wastewater, expanding existing city utilities to expand and provide redundancy, but also additional capacity out of the existing system for use of the Alsatian Oaks development. Russell Persign, with respect, can come up here and talk a little bit more about the details of the actual improvements, but what the agreement for the escrow does is it provides the mechanism for the developer to put the money into a third-party escrow agent's hands, whereby that money can only be used for the purposes of the improvement of the facilities. We're going to start with 3 phases, with the money coming in first to conduct due diligence on the city's existing water well to confirm adequate capacity. Assuming that that is adequate, then we move into a design phase, at which point the developer has to put additional money in to cover the anticipated costs of the design. And at completion of design, we will bid the contract publicly, and to the extent that the balance of the money that is needed in order to complete that, the developer will put in that money all in advance so that the city is never exposed for a cost obligation. The utility services agreement provides the mechanism by which the additional capacity that these improvements to the facility, or the city facilities will produce are to be allocated. There are approximately 586 LUEs that will be generated out of this investment. These are allocated to the Alsatian Oaks development, with an exception that we have reserved 100 LUEs to reallocate to somebody else that might come along, so long as the developer does not have an intention to use those LUEs within the next 3 years. So we have a limitation on commercial retail to be half of those LUEs, so that we're not providing too much direct competition against the person who's paying for this, but also provides the city with plenty of option and opportunity for other people that come in along this line. We think that this is an agreement that is in the spirit of the development agreement that was negotiated and signed last fall. It is the culmination of a lot of coordination and cooperation between both the city and the developer, and as the city's council, I recommend the approval of that ordinance. I'm going to let Russell Persine come up and visit a little bit about the schedule, but also the scope of the improvements that are going to be made, and talk about what benefits to the city this will have outside and beyond Alsatian Oaks, but to the city as a whole. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Clay. So the schedule allows, basically upon execution, if the council so approves, that we'll start due diligence. So the first thing that we'll do, we actually have all of our TxDOT permits in place so that we can begin this Friday. So this Friday we'll be running temporary water from the existing water system that terminates at the Chevy dealer. There's a fire hydrant there at that corner. We will take temporary water up to Victory Lane, underneath the highway via culverts, over to the water tower where the Medina Valley system is, and we will use that to basically refill that system while the well is down the week of May 4th. So the week of May 4th, we will take that well out of service. We will camera the well first, make sure everything looks good from a visual inspection, then we will begin pump testing the remainder of that week to ensure that, as you know, the well was previously tested at about 2,200 gallons per minute maximum production. So we're here to try to verify that we can at least get to 2,000, which is the planning number that was used in the report that I presented to council. We will also, once we camera that your well, the developer has agreed to pull the pump and camera the well that's at the corner of Highway 90 and the Walmart property. There's an existing well there that was a part of that land tract, and so we've asked the developer to do some due diligence to, number one, understand whether that's an asset or a liability. And understanding that will put the city in a position to understand, is it a long-term asset that you want to consider, or is it a long-term liability that you need to deal with before we get through this development. So that will occur directly after, and we've got all that coordinated. Once that testing is done, we'll provide those results back to everybody. Knock on wood that all that checks out. If things look to be consistent with what we've viewed in the reports, we will then move to design, which is a kind of a 2-week lag in the escrow agreement that those funds will become available. We will do all this work via our contractor special engineer to the city. So we'll provide a task order first for the due diligence. We'll be working with Peerless out of Hondo. We'll be doing that due diligence work. They do work for SAW and a lot of local folks in the area. So they will be out next week. After that, we will begin design. The developer would like to get utilities in place as quickly as possible. So we're working on that schedule to try to expedite that. We will have a couple of milestones, the preliminary design, kind of 100% design, and then final design, so that we can work through city staff and the developer to ensure that we can get those utilities to them. Just as a reminder, we'll be extending a 21-inch sewer line from the existing east side lift station gravity line that comes under 90 to the property, corner of the property of the development, and we'll be extending a 16-inch water main from the Medina Valley system under US 90 all the way down the right-of-way to Tondry Parkway, so where that will terminate, and the development will pick up at that location. So we'll basically try to run design kind of in 3 parallel tracks. One will be the production facilities, so the upgrades to the actual well, storage, and that'll probably be one package. There'll be one package for the wastewater line, and there'll be another for the water main and the bore under US 90. After that, we'll move to bid construction. We've been working with staff. We have everything coordinated from the standpoint of your loan proceeds that are part of this package. So we've been coordinating with the Water Development Board. They have all the paperwork, and it's just kind of working through their system. So we understand that that will be in place and available. We've worked with staff to make sure that we meet all their terms. Of course, TCEQ and the Water Development Board will have some review process during this time, and so that's really the schedule and what we've been trying to work towards to try to keep things moving. Everything is in the spirit of the Phase 1 report that I reported to this council, and I believe that is also an attachment to the agreement to get that whole. So if there are any questions at any point, I'll be here to answer those.
Thank you very much. It's exciting. We're on the road.
I have nothing to add. Available for questions.
I've got one question, Madam Mayor. This is Mr. Dyer. I read the whole agreement. I think it's a great agreement, and I'd like to compliment both you, Clay, for writing it, the developer for working with us, and the city staff. This is a complicated agreement, and it's very well explained in this document. I read it very carefully. I only found one mistake that I'd like to see corrected.
Okay.
In Exhibit D on page 3C, little I, you basically have LEU transposed to LUE. So you got to just make one correction.
We will fix that.
You got it right everywhere else in the document except right at the end in that paragraph.
I got tired.
I figured this is a great achievement, and I fully support it. I think you've done a great job.
Thank you.
I'd have to second that, so, thank you.
I got a question on all the work that needs to be done. Is any part of city staff going to do that? Are we going to bid it out or contract it?
So everything will go through public bid process, and so it will be privately secured via bid.
Okay. I want to share the same comments that Councilman Dyer said. I think everybody did a great job all the way around. I'm really proud of y'all.
Thank you.
Any more comments? Discussion?
None?
I would like to say one thing.
We're good?
Councilman Dyer and Councilman Byers. I've really enjoyed working with both of you. Thank you for all of your attention to this, and I wish you the best of luck as you roll out into the next phase off council. So thank you for your time and your service.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, this is Mr. Dyer. I'd like to make a motion that we accept the escrow agreement and the utility service agreement ordinance as written.
No,
I
second.
have a second.
I'll second.
So we have a second by,
Mr. Carey?
or I couldn't hear. Okay, Mr. Carey. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Binford. Thank you, Mr. Persine.
Thank you all. We'll see you soon.
Safe trip.
Okay, let's go back. Thank you so much. If Kim isn't there, can we go to number, the consider an appropriate action on an ordinance?
Kim, are you available on the phone? Kim? Yep. We'll go on. Let me call her.
So number 8, yes. Yes, ma'am, we can continue on. We haven't gotten her on the phone yet.
All right. This is consider and take appropriate action on ordinance amending ordinance 2020-007 and extending the declaration of local disaster, establishing rules and regulations for the duration of the disaster, restricting certain activities, establishing penalties for violations. As you all know, the governor announced the 27th, he has more or less rescinded all of our ordinances and amendments, and I'm just going to briefly summarize. It's called Order GA-16. existing order is GA16, which will expire on April 30th. We will have a new one called GA18 that we must all follow. The only caveat with this that ours are going to be rescinded totally, except we may, if council approves, we may suggest that citizens continue to wear face covering, something covering the nose and mouth, but we cannot enforce it. In addition, if they do decide to continue to cover their noses and mouths, we need to go by the provisions that were in our amendment with the surveillance. You can't wear a mask when you go into the bank, obviously. So that's one thing we can do. I'd like to quickly summarize the executive order. It's 61 pages, and I believe that it's been posted. Deborah said she has sent each one of you a copy, I believe, right?
That's correct.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So it keeps the stay home and work home in place. But what they're trying to do is reopen services, but they have to follow appropriate guidelines. Retail can be done retail through pickup, delivery, mail, or delivered to doorstep. It also opens up in-store retail services for retail establishments that operated up to 25% of the local listed occupancy. Now, I'm not real sure if all of us have an occupancy sign. I don't know if we have a fire marshal. I'm new at this. Do we? I guess that's something we'll discuss later. But if you have the opposite, yes, ma'am.
Hey, so, for the businesses, they have an occupancy certificate that they have to have posted.
All right, so that's what we need is that occupancy certificate, and then they would have operate up to 25%. The problem is the difference in proportion or percentage is according to the number of cases the county has. We've got a high number of cases. Right now we have 19. So our percentage, I'm not sure if it's 25 because I haven't read the whole 61 pages, which everyone's invited to do, but that will dictate how much is open. This again is just a summary. Movie theaters are going to be the same percentage. They're going to have their open shopping malls, museums and libraries. However, they can operate, museums and libraries can operate it if permitted by the local government. So that is another possibility we have if we don't want them to open, or if we do, caveat, if they do open, as far as a public library or a museum, they cannot touch anything. So if there's anything interactive or actual computer that they touch, that's got to be worked out. So that's part of it. So I'm not going to read it all, but what it does do is it's going to give us, our businesses some help and dine-in restaurant services, but again, it's only a certain percent of the occupancy. And thank you, was that Councilman Martinez? Thank you so much for that reminder that they do have to have that occupancy certificate. So, Deborah, what should we do at this point? I believe we can say that the City Hall, we can keep it closed if we like. We can keep our parks or our museums if we like. So that would be up to you guys right now. Deborah, can you give me some help on this, please?
Yes, ma'am, and I think Cynthia is on the line, too. I'm not sure if she's called in.
Cynthia, wonderful.
But,
yes, ma'am, I'm on the line.
yes, currently with your exhibits, you may keep the same ones. I know we were talking, the staff, on whether or not y'all want to keep the City Hall the way it is, as far as the hours and that type of thing. I guess the exhibit that's with this current ordinance, Exhibit B, with the face mask and such, is the ones y'all are discussing. That would be the ones that you would have to probably change the wording. And also in this ordinance, in talking with Cynthia, the highlighted area is also about the fine and fees. You may want to remove that. And she can probably speak more on that too. And if you have something that you want to add to it, that you can do that too at this time.
Go ahead, guys. District 1, 2, 3, 4 in order, please, if you have any questions.
For District 1, I think we need to keep the face covering, because like you said, our numbers are not down low, and we're nowhere near this being at the end. So it's a safety caveat for not only those that may have it, don't have symptoms, and those people that do not have anything. It might be a smart thing to keep the face covering.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah, recommendation can be mandatory.
District 2 agrees thoroughly with District 1.
Okay?
I agree with
District 3?
Sheena. Yeah.
I agree also.
District 4?
I agree that we need to keep face coverings as a recommendation.
District 5?
I read the whole plan very carefully, and I don't understand why we need to keep our ordinance in place. We're not really going to be able to enforce the mask, although it's voluntary, people can certainly do it. What I would recommend is, rather than us trying to go through and decide everything in this meeting, that we let the city administrator review it in view of the governor's new instructions, and that we let him put out an update to the city notice that he put out previously that can provide instructions on the things that he wishes to open. But from my perspective on the city hall, I think we're okay.
Mayor Dyer, I'm sorry, but we can't do that. This is a emergency ordinance right now. It's not a city ordinance. I think we need Cynthia's counsel on this. We can't decide which ones we want to do.
So is our option to
This
just...
ordinance would be out for businesses also. I did send it out to chamber. It's not the city's duty, our local municipality, to enforce the governor's order. It's, everybody has this order.
Then I guess my question, Madam Mayor, to you is, our ordinance expires on the 30th of April. So are you asking us to vote to extend it, and if so, how long?
The only part that we discussed with the county of extending would be the city hall closure. But that was it. If you guys are interested in keeping the park and the library closed, that would be another possibility on our side. But if we decide to open the park, we decide to open the library, we decide to open City Hall, we have to abide by the requirements in the order. And I'm going to jump in at this point. Yes, ma'am. So the first thing is that one of the first things that the council needs to decide is that, do y'all want to extend emergency orders past the April 30th deadline? So that's the first issue. And then the second issue is then, what do y'all want to comply with? Because what you can do, which makes it a little bit easier, is just incorporate the governor's orders into the city's ordinance, and then the city is just following and tracking along with the governor's orders, and then you won't have any discrepancy between the two. So it just makes it easy to follow through with that.
I like that.
It will make mask, it will have the recommendation of the mask, but of course, as the governor's orders indicated, if somebody is seen without a mask, it wouldn't be a violation subject to penalty. So that the city can still push that for safety reasons, saying we really encourage y'all to wear these masks. It just would not be a violation of the ordinance, subject to fines. So I think that's excellent. And the easiest way to try to figure out and put into place what's going to happen. And then that way, you know, because the governor's order says that the city's libraries or the governor's order say that libraries can reopen, well then the city, you know, if, you know, after a review says, yeah, we want to go ahead and reopen the library, it can be reopened under those guidelines. Excellent.
Put that in a
Cindy?
motion, Ms. Martinez.
Well, we can't hear what all she was saying because there's someone that hasn't muted their phone, and we can hear background noises and televisions and such. I'm sorry.
That's better.
Thank you.
What I understand is our attorney said just go with the governor's orders, and we will have the face mask included even though it's not in the governor's, but it cannot be enforced.
It was my impression that that's what you had said the first time, so I agree.
Yeah.
Want to make that motion?
It's a suggestion, not a mandatory.
I will make the motion that we adopt the governor's instructions and guidelines for the emergency declaration, and that we encourage citizens of Castroville to wear face masks when in public places.
We've got to have a date, though, too, don't we?
And we extend it through the end of May.
I second.
And I'm just going to jump in here to make sure that I understand, because I'm going to make these changes to the ordinance. That we want the governor's order incorporated into the city's ordinance, and that we continue with the governor's orders until such time as either the governor rescinds the orders or we set a future date for review to rescind the ordinance. So if that's okay, that's how I'm interpreting the motion.
Yeah, May 30th is the date we'll review.
Yes, to be reviewed at our first meeting before May 30th.
Okay. All good?
You got a second from Mr. Dyer.
Okay.
But,
All right. So we had a second?
yeah.
We're extending it with this.
Everything in here,
Right.
including cutoff dates.
We probably have to cancel.
Yeah.
Can I talk or can I?
Mayor, can staff ask a question on the exhibits?
Of course, it's Cynthia. Yes.
Mayor, hi, this is Leroy. Just a quick question. So we're going to keep all the current exhibits. One thing in one of our exhibits it has where the court is to remain open, but it's been closed. So we can make that change to go ahead and close it until, I guess, till May
I can't
30th.
hear anything. There's some other conversation going on.
Someone's not muting their phones.
Hey, Mayor, can you hear me now?
Okay. Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
my question was regarding the exhibits. We're going to keep the exhibits as is, but one of the exhibits has the municipal court is to remain open. So we're going to make that change to reflect that no, it's going to be closed until May 30th is one thing. The other thing is the utilities are going to continue with no disconnection. We had talked about possibly waiving the late fees that I wanted to ask you guys how you want to proceed with that. I think that was the only other thing that we had on there that we wanted just clarification on, I guess.
I don't think this would be the time for the utilities. I don't think that would be an ordinance or the emergency ordinance. I think we could make that our own policy.
But that's under the current one, I think exhibit A, I think, is where it's at now, correct?
It would just stay in force.
Just staying forced, okay.
I agree.
In other words, we wouldn't cut anybody off.
Right.
That's all we're saying.
Suspended cutoffs.
We're not going to change that.
So public parks are to remain the way they currently are, just leave it as is.
I think so.
Can we hold on a second? Whoever has their phone on and is not talking, please push the mute button because it's very distracting and we can't understand what everybody's saying. So if you're on the phone and not talking, please have your phone on mute.
They probably can't hear you.
Obviously, they're not listening to the meeting either.
So we got a motion? We got a second?
Yes.
So the
All in
public hearing
favor?
is closed.
Aye.
All opposed? All right.
As I understand it, our current ordinance stays in place as is, with the exceptions of anything that would be in conflict with the governor's direction.
Yes, exactly. What was that? What's that surety clause? Mrs. Trevino, what is that clause that goes at the end? So, what I will say is, because I'm not sure what clause you're referencing, Mayor, but what I will say is that I will draft this ordinance so that it incorporates the governor's orders and makes provisions to where the governor's orders will work in tandem with what's currently on the books for the city of Castroville. Yes, that's exactly what I meant. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. I kind of thought so, but we'll make sure to get that all put together in writing. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Get the word now.
Or do we have Kim yet? Yes, I'm on.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Kim. Thank you. We're going to discuss the 2019 annual audit presentation and accept it. All yours, Kim.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, it's wonderful to be with you somewhat today. I say somewhat, of course, only being via phone. I hope, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, we
Not
can
really.
hear
I
you.
understand. I hear that.
If you just keep.
Yes, but I hear that background as well. Well, I know we're going to kind of muddle through and hopefully, please stop me if you have any questions. My biggest apology is I know usually when I'm giving this report, I like to try to pause and give time for questions along the way. So please, if anyone needs to interrupt me, feel free. So first and foremost, I wanted to just say thank you to the staff. As always, Leroy and Hilda, as well as everyone there at City Hall, very, very helpful in helping us locate records that we needed and providing us answers and information. So I always have to say thank you to them. The next most important thing I have to tell you, of course, would be that our audit this year, we did issue what's called an unmodified opinion. That's unmodified. That's the good one that you want. It's often referred to as a clean opinion, but what it means really is that we had no modifications to a standard audit report. I hope that you've got your bound copies there in front of you. I'm going to address first the loose letter that should be with your bound reports of your audit. This is our communication, our required communication that we go over each year, and so I'm just going to hit over a couple of highlights within this letter. So the first thing in this letter is going to be on page 2. This is about a 4-page letter. It's real short if anyone's trying to locate where I'm at. And in this particular letter, one of the things that we refer to is any estimates that the city might have. And the reason why it's so important for us to discuss your estimates is simply because estimates can often be an opportunity for management to manipulate financial statements if they want to. And so what we're required to do as auditors is to say whether or not the financials have been misstated because of those estimates. So therefore, what we do as part of our procedures is we look to what the underlying reason for those estimates are. And so that's why it's important for us to discuss those with you. So the nice thing is that your estimates for this year, for the fiscal year ended September 30th, 2019, were no different than the previous year. So your estimates remain the same as far as what they are. Now the numbers might have changed, but the items that cannot be determined that have to be estimated are the same items. So you can see those there on the middle of page 2. The other thing that I just mainly want to leave you with is that these estimates we feel like are very reasonable. They've got a lot of good underlying support to them. And the last one, the most impactful to your financial statements, is related to your pension and what's called an OPEB. Now the OPEB was pretty new as of last year as far as the disclosures for it. It's been around for a long time, but in case anyone doesn't remember what that acronym stands for, that's your other post-employment benefits.
For the city of Castroville, the only one you have is your sudden death benefits related to TMRS. So that's really about the only thing y'all have as far as an OPEB. But the main point I want to make here, again, is that the estimates related to your future unfunded pension liability isn't even determined at the city level. That comes directly from TMRS. So the point here is just that your financials are not misstated or not manipulated because someone wanted to make the bottom line look better or look worse. Those numbers come directly from TMRS, and they're based on actuaries and a lot of assumptions that go into it. So are there any questions regarding that part?
Not here.
Okay. The next thing that I usually want to mention from this letter is whether or not you had any significant adjustments. And for the most part, most of our journal entries this year, our audit adjustments that we proposed, were very typical in nature. They're very standard and routine. We've got them listed out there on page 3. The first set of items that we have there are things that were so immaterial we didn't bother to adjust them. And then the next group is the items that we felt like we were just kind of assisting management because they're certainly very routine in nature and they tend to be adjusted at the time of the audit. The only material adjustment that we felt like we had to make was there was a little bit, and we did leave one other recommendation related to this, and we've discussed this with management already, but we did have just a little bit of adjustment that needed to be made to try to clean up some of the balance sheet accounts in a few of the funds. And so there has certainly been a lot of improvement over the last couple of years even as far as reconciling those balance sheet accounts. So we certainly want to make sure that that is made clear that there has been a lot of improvement made, but there was still one adjustment that we had to make in order to get the financials kind of balanced out at 9/30, and that did fall into what we would have to classify as a significant adjustment. So our recommendation was simply to continue those processes of reconciling those items, and I know that's something that Leroy and Hilda have really done a lot with, and they've really shown a lot of improvement going forward. And then lastly from this letter, the only other thing I usually try to bring up is that the city was in fact in compliance with the Public Funds Investment Act. So are there any questions for me regarding that letter?
No questions here.
None?
No.
No?
Okay.
All good, thank you. And so that classification of principal payments made of the utility and airport fund, we kind of discussed that one. So just making those things clear. Good. Thank you.
Correct. And part of the reason why we feel like those are routine in nature, just to get a little more clarification there, is because a lot of times many municipalities will treat the utility fund or the airport fund in your case, any of their proprietary or enterprise funds, those often are budgeted similar to the way the general fund would be budgeted for. Therefore, those principal payments are often shown as like an expenditure. But unfortunately, because they are truly enterprise funds, then that's where, as far as the audit and to be in accordance with government accounting standards, they really have to be shown as reductions of liabilities. But certainly, it is certainly a cash outflow for the city, and so that's where a lot of times that budget mentality of showing it as an expenditure is considered very routine and very typical.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So moving on then to the report, I'm going to just kind of touch over some highlights here, of course. So if you'll turn to your actual bound report, if you'll look to page 13 and 14, this particular statement, and as you may recall, and just for anyone who hasn't had an opportunity to hear a presentation from me before, this first set of statements it's called the government-wide statement. And the reason why it's called that is it represents the entire city, and it represents it as if it were acting like a true business in all forms. So therefore, it's been converted. The general fund is now here being shown as like a business. And the reason why I say that is typically when you're budgeting and when you're dealing with the general fund, You would not see any future principal payments, and you would not see capital outlay as anything other than an expenditure. But here what we've done is that we've made these conversion entries to show it like a business would be. Therefore, you can see down there, about halfway down the page, you can see capital assets, and you can also see on the following page, you'll see long-term liabilities. So this has pulled in all those long-term assets and all the long-term liabilities. Very typical of a business, but not typical at all as the way a city would normally budget and operate. But I do feel like it's still a fairly important statement to look at because it does show the city as a whole. So when you're looking there in the governmental activity column, that represents the majority of the city's funds. That has the general fund, all your special revenue funds, as well as the debt service fund. And then the business type activity column, that represents the utility fund or enterprise funds, as well as the water acquisition, the water impact, and the sewer impact fees. And it also includes the airport fund. So that's why I say this whole statement is the whole city at a glance. So looking down this particular statement, you can see there that you had about halfway down the page, you had 41.8 million worth of total assets for the whole city. Now, about 68%, the majority of those total assets, or 28.7 million, is within your capital assets. That includes your buildings and improvements, your infrastructure, any projects that were still in progress, which I know there still are quite a bit from, specifically from the Water Development Board funded projects. So a lot of that is representative of your total assets, but that's very normal for a city to have the majority of their assets be invested within the capital assets of the city. What I thought was unusual, because I do try to present this a lot of times as percentages, what I don't always see is that you as a city, the majority of the remainder of your assets is within your cash. You had $11.9 million within cash and cash investments. And that's about 28% of the rest of your total assets. And that's very high. So a lot of times we don't see such a liquid city. I continue to be, and you know, you're very financially sound by looking through the next page. You can see your total liabilities there. You had total liabilities of $18.7 million, but about 88% of that is not something that's going to be paid in the following year. So that, for example, would represent all those future bond payments, and especially that Water Development Board loans that you will be paying back over many years. A lot of that is made up in here in your total liability. You also have that net pension liability, which is a long-term item that's going to be paid out over many years, as well as, again, that OPEB, which is also related to the TMRS and is also going to be paid out over many years. Any questions so far?
Not here?
Nope.
No questions.
Okay. All good. So, great. So just to kind of hit the point home, your total position, you can see there, and again, for the total for the city, your total net position was $23.5 million. So that basically means your assets, if you paid off every liability, you would still have $23.5 million. Now, the majority of that, of course, again, is still within the city's infrastructure and buildings and equipment and whatnot, and it typically is for every city we see. But what we don't always see is an unrestricted net position, and you actually have an unrestricted net position of $6.8 million, which again, that's just very impressive to see because again, a lot of our cities, which are local cities, and they still, they have good management, but they don't always have that positive unrestricted net position. So just something I'd just like to point out for you, kind of a good, unique position for you to be in. Wonderful. Okay. Well, moving on, if you'll turn now to page 17 of your report. So just to break this down into a little bit more detail, again, the numbers we've just been looking at are the entire city. So now we're going to look at those same numbers a little bit differently and a little bit more carved down. So now we're looking at the balance sheet for the general fund, and you'll see a second column there for other non-major governmental funds. Again, that's all your special revenue funds. So that includes, for instance, the library fund, the court technology and security fund, and police forfeiture funds, your debt service fund, any of your special revenue funds like that. That's what's made up in that second column. So because they're typically considered immaterial, that's why I'm going to focus just on the general fund for right now. So looking at that first column for your general fund, you can see you have total assets of $2.7 million, again, the majority of which being in your cash and investments, similar to what we've seen before. Now, the reason why the total assets are lower is, again, this has now got all that long-term stuff removed. This is now going to be in the presentation that's much more like the city typically budgets and operates under. So even though you had total assets of $2.7 million, you can see you have very few liabilities at September 30. And so moving on down all the way to the bottom of the page, you actually have $2.4 million in your general fund balance. And the majority of that's unassigned. Oh, sorry, was there a question?
No,
Oh, okay, sorry. Just trying to listen for any interruptions.
certainly.
So the majority of which, of course, is unassigned, and that just means it can be used for any general operations of the city. And when I took an average of your operating expenditures for the FY19 year, that basically means that you've got approximately 10.1 months worth of average operating expenditures in your general fund balance. And that is just off the charts. The GFOA usually recommends about 3 to 6 months in the general fund. So very impressive, very nice, healthy, liquid position for the city.
I have a question, and I'm not, an expert at budget. So would this be including reserves?
That is the reserve.
Yeah, as I say, that basically is the reserve. So it's within the general fund, there's nothing specific. Yeah, there's nothing specific in the general fund that says you have any real restrictions. The only thing there that's non-spendable is just if it's monies that had already been spent, in this case for inventory. And so the majority of what your cash in the general fund can be spent on just general operations for the city. So that basically would be your reserve. But yes, 10.1 months. They're very impressive.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so I'm going to make you do some page turning here. If you'll actually go to page 54 of your report, to look at the revenues and expenditures for the general fund, I thought it would be better to see it in a little bit more comparison to your budget as well as to the prior year. I'll give you just a minute to flip there.
What page was that?
54.
54?
Page 54. I also kind of want to give a little bit of a reason as to why your general fund has gotten up, quite to be in that healthy position that it is. Okay, so I'm guessing if you're there now?
Yes.
So the way this statement lays out, and you can see your headings there across the top. You've got your original and final budgets to the far left two columns. Your actual numbers for FY19 are bolded, and they're right there in the center. The next column, you can see your favorable or unfavorable variance to the final budget. And then your comparative historical number from FY18 is off to the far right. So you can see there that your total revenues were $2.8 million. Compared to your final budget, they actually had a favorable variance. And the main place for that favorable variance came in within your ad valorem taxes. Your collections there were actually higher than what had been budgeted. And that kind of makes sense because your budget was actually a little bit lower than even last year's collections. But you can see there that your current year collections came in higher than even prior year. Going on down there, you can see that your total expenditures also were well below your final budget. And a lot of that, of course, had to do within just, conservative spending within the city. I know a lot of that did come from staffing that were not, positions that were not fully staffed for the entire fiscal year. So I know it came at a lot of hard work at the staff that was employed and with the city, as well as just really conscious spending of the council and everything. But overall, you can see there that that resulted in a favorable variance across all the departments, $735,000. You can see it's also a decline from the prior year of $3.3 million in expenditures. So the current year had about a $300,000 decline from prior year expenditures. But overall, the point I always try to bring up, because I know there tends to be an ongoing question about it, and good analysis would show that if you're just looking here at your general fund operates in a loss. And so even with such a good year, your revenues coming in higher than budget, your expenditures coming in well below budget and lower than the prior year, you can see there that you still have an excess of expenditures over your revenues of $189,000 this year. Now, prior year, you can see there that was about $711,000, and I think that had been more of the historical trend, that it had been averaging around that $700,000 loss. Which is why then, if you go on to the next page, you can see, of course, that the general fund is supplemented from the enterprise funds, primarily from the utility fund, for those expenditures that are recognized in the general fund, but essentially covered by transfers and supplemented from the utility fund. So in last year, looking at 2018, you can see that's the only reason why you ended up having just barely breaking even in the general fund. This year, since the deficiency wasn't as large as it typically has been, then you actually had a pretty healthy change in fund balance of about $643,000. Those transfer amounts, I believe, have been about the same for many years, and I know I've been asked before, kind of what those transfers are based on. They can be changed as needed, but I think it would be a lot of work and a lot of legwork to really try to go through and determine what the actual costs are. The thing I feel like I've seen is that it typically had kind of brought the general fund to whole. This year, I think, was just sort of an anomaly year that brought it such a positive change in fund balance. Are there any questions regarding that?
No questions.
Nope.
Well, I feel bad. I know I kind of talked about the enterprise funds and the airport fund in total before. If anyone would like to, I'd be happy to lead you to a page where you can see those a little bit split up separately.
Okay.
Okay. So then in that case, it would be, if you'll turn to, I tell you what, let me go ahead and lead you to the operating revenues and expenses. So if you'll turn to page 24 of your report.
What page number?
24.
Page 24.
Well, I heard it.
All right, is there still a question on the page number?
Nope.
Okay, great. Okay, so looking through this, so again, this would be kind of based on the numbers we've seen earlier when we were talking about the business type activities. Now, since your enterprise funds are always reported like a business, then that's why these would still have the adjustments that we talked about before, where we've removed the principal payments out of the expenses, because really they need to just be a straight reduction of the liability that was seen on the balance sheet. So this kind of is, this has been adjusted from what the internal financial statements would have shown, but it basically would be more on an accurate accrual basis here. So again, I want to point out that your utility fund does still represent of course, your typical utility fund, but it is also including the water acquisition fund, the sewer impact, and the water impact fund. It also includes the fund that has been used to track all of the Water Development Board projects, but as those are typically more balance sheet accounts, they're not going to impact this particular statement as much. Then you can see your airport fund there in the second column. So looking on down, you can see you have very healthy operating revenues from both, from the utility fund as well as the airport fund. Your operating expenses down below are $4.7 million and almost $600,000 respectively. But if you'll see that operating income or loss, that's about halfway down the page there, then that's kind of the key factor. So your utility fund is operating at a very healthy income. And part of that, again, is because I know a lot of your rates are structured so that they can cover those supplemental funding to the general fund that we just talked about and just looked at. And you'll see those transfers down below. So I just kind of want to point out that I recognize that operating income is very high, but a lot of that is because the transfers to supplement the general fund are going to be below. So that's kind of a skewed figure because you haven't seen the transfers yet when you're looking just at that line. The other thing I wanted to point out is looking beside that at the airport fund, you may see that as being an operating loss. And it is, but the main thing is within the airport fund is they do have a lot of assets out there, a lot of the capital assets within the airport. So, and a lot of that came from TxDOT contributions, so not even necessarily at the cost of the city. But the depreciation that we have to recognize for those assets is hitting the expenses here, even though that's not a cash outflow. So even though you see that operating loss, it's not necessarily that the airport is operating under a cash outflow loss. So just want to point that out, because essentially if you remove that depreciation, that operating loss would actually turn into an operating income. And then going on down below, you can see that there were some other non-operating items as well as those transfers, as I mentioned below. So if you get down towards the bottom, you'll see the actual change in that position. Even after that general fund supplement, the utility fund is still operating at $1.5 million almost, and the airport is still operating in a little bit of a loss, but again, keeping in mind a lot of that is coming from that depreciation, and really your airport fund is actually operating in a pretty healthy operating capacity as well. And in fact, I shared with Leroy that one of my partners who was reviewing this report at the firm was impressed and wanted to share with some of the other cities he works with what y'all's secret is, because he said most airport fund PCs are depleted bad.
I have a question.
Yes.
On the operating grant, that 46,595, is that our ramp grant? It's actually 50?
Yes, it sure is.
So actually, part of that, the city paid a portion of that also, but that still goes
Correct.
to the airport fund.
That's correct.
Okay.
So that operating grant part represents what was actually received from TxDOT, but you're correct. The city would have paid their portion, which would be recognized in the expenses for.
Okay. Would be, okay, I got it. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions on this particular statement?
No?
Okay. Well, that's actually my entire presentation. I feel bad. I hate, kind of doing presentations like this because I do feel like it's a little bit of an added challenge. But I guess the positive is that we're really learning our capacity within technology. So anytime if you ever do have a question, we're happy to schedule any kind of a meeting, if it's not just the typical presentation here at the audit. But if anything does come up at any time, we're always happy to come out.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And with that,
Thank you,
yes,
Kim.
ma'am. With that, I'm going to go back to muted status.
Thank you, Ms. Roach.
Wonderful. Thank you. So, do I have a motion to accept?
You're going to have any discussion first?
Would you like, is there a discussion? We'll go in order. District 1?
No discussion.
District 2?
I think it's really nice to be in a position where we are so liquid, in a situation where we're looking at a lot of changes in our environment in the near future. So I think it's a great report and we're in a great position.
District 3?
I'm glad to be leaving with the city in such good shape.
Bravo. District 4?
My comments, the same as everybody else.
Okay. District 5?
I just would like to compliment the city staff. I think you've done a great job in this year. I think there's been a lot of challenges, and it's clear we're going to have a lot in the coming year, but I think we're in a very good position, and I think I'm very pleased with this report. I think everybody concerned should feel very good about it. I know I do. Thank you.
All right, do I have a motion to accept?
I move we accept the auditor's report as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? All right, let's go to discussion and possible action on a request from owner Joseph Winkler of Hillside Boutique Hotel to waive a first quarter hotel occupancy tax. All right, this wasn't, I didn't really get back on this agenda item because I haven't been into City Hall, but I did discuss this with Cynthia, our city attorney, and there's not much we can do except suspend only the city's portion of hot for a short period of time, or reduce the city's portion of hot for a short period of time, or set up a grant from hot funds. I will, keeping up with the emergency orders and declarations, cities, and I have also joined in on a letter to the governor about this ability to use hot funds for grants. At this time, talking to Mr. Winkler, since there's not much we can really do except these things that Cynthia suggested, but however Ms. Deborah Howe tells me we can't, she could explain that. But I believe we could waiver a late fee also. Deborah, would you like to explain that hot fund thing you were telling me?
Well, I went by what Cynthia has.
Deborah,
Go ahead. Cynthia can explain, because I was going to her.
This is Cynthia, and I'm going to kind of jump in here. Oh, hi, good, Cynthia, thank you. Yes, so the issue with the hotel taxes is that what is currently due April 20th, or was due April 20th, was the taxes that were collected January 1 through March 31. So the city can waive penalty and interest. If it chose to, the city can give an extended time period for payment without penalties and interest. If it chose to, there again, as the mayor pointed out, only on its portion of the taxes. The city could also temporarily suspend hotel taxes, if it chose to. The all policy decisions, for a city council to make, but we can only do with that portion that belongs to the city.
Question.
I know that yes, sir.
Cynthia, you say we can suspend the 6% that the city charges. Can we do that retroactively?
So the answer is no, we could not do it retroactively. However, the city could expend hotel taxes in the form of a grant that would be grant assistance to those businesses that qualify, and basically it would work as a rebate, so that whatever got paid in, the city could theoretically in turn set up grant amounts that would in essence allow them to seek those funds from the city hotel tax grant, and then they could use those funds as necessary to support their business to ensure that those businesses are still up and running and can bring tourism into the city with hopefully, the restrictions being lifted. So we can't make it retroactive, but we could make it into some form of a grant, which in essence, would almost work like a pass-through. It would come into the city, but the grant would allow it to go back out. I'd like to add just one thing. Mr. Winkler is one of our biggest sales tax contributors. I don't think he would mind discussing the fact that he lost all of his reservations due to the pandemic. So he lost several hundreds of thousands of dollars. He did say that he's able to do his comptroller portion, but he's having difficulty right now to do the 6% to the city. Now, the fact that we are going to slowly reopen businesses, I think it's a good thing, and I think will help him immensely. But I just really think, he deserves some help if we possibly can. Thank you.
I would also, again, this is Cynthia, I would also point out that the state comptroller was very firm in its collection capacity, for the state's resources on that. And, some cities have kind of taken the position, the same position as the state comptrollers in that, this is all monies that was collective and should have been set aside, prior to the emergency situations. But I understand, and I know that all of these emergency situations caught everyone off guard. So, as I said, completely a policy decision on council's part on how to treat that.
Cynthia, is it proper to ask how much do we have in our hot funds right now?
Sure, if anybody has that number available.
Mr. Vidal, yes, as of today, we've collected $33,000 out of our $58,000 budget.
I would be much
And we
more,
don't have any recurring uses of funds that I'm aware of, because I do sign checks. I think there's some advertising that we don't, it's not that expensive. I think it's 300 and something, I can't remember. But I think you handle those, don't you?
No, ma'am, but I can say that on the Steinbach House, we do have payroll that comes out of that each year. That's what we budgeted for. Plus, I believe the 4th of July, y'all have that set aside. The tour to Castroville is set aside, which those two items I think are coming up still. But Leroy, Mr. Valdelis could probably tell us how much we've got for the Steinbach House out of part of those funds.
We budgeted 37.
And this is Cynthia one more time. I'm going to butt in one more time, and then I will hold my peace until council directs me. But whatever is set up has to be applied equally across the board to all persons who are paying hotel occupancy tax into the city. So it can't be something that is just for the one business owner. It's got to be for everybody. It's got to be the same across the board.
So just to clarify that for the council, that would mean we'd have to, if we gave a grant, the biggest payer is, of course, Mr. Winkler. The next largest payer is the Landmark Inn, and then we have two other bed and breakfasts that pay very, very little if they paid anything.
Correct.
So we've got only to deal with those hot tax payers.
I would be much more comfortable
That's
with,
correct.
I would be much more comfortable with an application and grant process than modifying our ordinance and adjusting our rates or anything. But, to use those monies to reinvest into those businesses is not a bad idea.
I tend to agree with you, although,
Landmark Inn.
I tend to agree
I'm sorry,
that, I tend to agree that we need to invest in our businesses. However, in reality, this 6% and 6% was paid for by the customer, and that should be set aside and go into a fund just the same as sales tax to be prepared and be used, should not be commingled with other money, and it sounds like that's what has happened because it's apparently not there. I, for one, am not too wild about, the idea that that 6% should still be there and should be paid in.
That's kind of what I
When
said.
did the 6% quarter start? It was, the pandemic started in?
It doesn't matter when it started, it's still the fact that that 12% is paid for by the customer and should be set aside to be
Exactly.
paid.
His problem was he lost his reservation
But
that
if
he
he
had.
didn't have any reservations, he didn't have any money come in, so there's nothing there to take a tax on.
As one who collects,
January and February.
as one who
He's
collects,
got he has operation and maintenance of the hotel, which is quite a lot.
But that is
He
not,
did extensive renovation.
but that comes out of what you charge for your rooms. That comes out of your net and your gross profit for your business. That should not come out of sales tax or hotel occupancy tax money.
I'm not arguing with your logic that he probably didn't budget well. Is that what you're saying?
Sounds like it.
We'll have to talk to Mr. Winkler.
Well, both council members, Kerry and Byers, bring up very good points. I agree with Jesse, Councilman Byers on that note, but I guess we need to be a little more compassionate and try to do anything we can to help these guys.
So as one who collects sales tax for the state of Texas and the city of Castroville, I agree. That's monies that aren't mine, that I am the trustee of that for the state and the city. And if I don't turn them in on time and register the correct paperwork, they come at me.
Right.
So I would at this point make a motion that we establish an,
I didn't get to talk yet.
oh, I'm sorry.
Can I make a discussion before we go to motion?
And Ms. Martinez might want to talk too.
Ms. Martinez, we didn't ask you, would you like to talk about this before we get into the District 5?
Yeah, I agree with you guys. This is a bill that was due. It was known when it was due. And yeah, I feel bad for businesses, especially his that lost establishments. But we don't want to lose them.
No.
So stepping aside from the 6% may not be a bad thing. But, we'll want to help them as much as possible. So
Are you finished, Sheena?
that's my feelings on it.
Okay, this is Herb Dyer. I have a different approach on this. At this particular time, it is clear to the city that we're going to have to look at a lot of areas in the city where people can't pay their bills, and especially when we look at the utility fund, but we're not going to discuss that tonight. I'm just trying to set the stage that in the next several months, we're going to have to look at some real significant problems, and we're going to have to get some relief for people who have been out of work. Now, I don't disagree with anything you've said about planning for the hotel. I think you're correct. But as a city, Mr. Winkler pays us over $10,000 in this quarter in taxes, and this is a significant taxpayer. So what I would recommend is that we consider giving a grant to all the hotel taxpayers for the time equal to the amount of money they paid between January and March of 2020, and that we give them a grant equal to the amount they paid to try to keep them solvent and be able to keep their businesses open. And that's all I'd like to say.
Do you make that in the form of a motion? Because you just made my motion.
Well, I'd be happy to make it into a motion.
Yes.
I move the city...
Second, I didn't ask for a motion.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor.
You don't have to ask for a motion.
Excuse me.
May I make another comment?
Say something.
May I make another comment? My discussion was as far as, my idea was not,
Can't hear.
okay, my idea was
Can't
not,
hear.
well, I
Somebody
can't,
needs to mute.
my idea was to not change our taxing purpose. I like both your ideas about a grant. I mean, we're going to have, the city's going to be doing that probably more than once. I'd like to go that way rather than forgive a tax. Pay the tax, then apply for a grant, and it comes back at you. It may be taken from Peter to pay Paul, but we don't start messing with our tax ordinances. But I do like both your ideas about the grant. I can definitely support that.
And I just like to, again, it's not my idea. These were Cynthia's. You have the letter that Mr. Winkler sent me and council. I'm a little dismayed that council is berating him for not budgeting correctly with sales tax, because as our attorney said, right now it's a terrible, terrible time, terrible. And a lot of businesses, maybe he did overspend, who knows, but that's not, we're not here to, tell someone how to run their business. That's not position, but I really appreciate the thought that we can, if the attorney said, possibly the grant idea. So I'm going to go in order again, one more time. District 1? I can't hear anything.
Yeah, I'm for all, setting them up a grant or something to help them out. Like I said, I don't want to lose the establishment. They're a good business there.
Okay? Is that good? Okay, let's go to 2.
I fully support using the available funds in the hot tax or hot funds account to offset some of the losses of the payees into the hot fund.
3?
I agree totally with District 2.
Thank you. 4?
I agree with District 2 also.
Right? 5?
I agree. I'd like to make a motion when you're ready.
Go ahead.
I do have a question there, I guess for clarification. Mayor, hi. So just for clarification, for the first quarter, for all those 4 businesses that are affected, are we saying that they still owe for quarter 1? Or are they going to apply for the grant for quarter 1? I'm not sure how this is going to work out.
Yes.
I'm going to take.
They've already paid it.
Well, can't hear anything.
At all.
This is Cynthia. I'm gonna jump in again. What I would recommend is that Leroy has, Mr. Vidalis has some good points here. You know, what will the parameters be? And so I think the best way to go about this is perhaps city staff kind of workshop this up a little bit and bring back a proposal that they think will work, rather than trying to figure out the details, you know, in a short period of time here at this council meeting. It might be best if we tell out ins and outs, and I can also check to see what other cities have done, and perhaps somebody's already invented this wheel or got their wheel almost perfected, and maybe we can just, you know, use some of those provisions just to kind of help streamline the process.
Excellent. Okay, I'll take a motion.
You want a motion or you want to wait?
I'm prepared to make a motion.
For the staff.
Okay, this is Mr. Dyer.
I'm sorry, yes.
I move the city grant all the hot taxpayers for January through March 2020 an amount equal to what they paid for the first quarter.
Second.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Vidalis?
No, I guess I'm still lost on this. I'm not sure how that would work. Mr. Dyer, can you just...
They would pay you what they owe you
Right.
for their 6%, and we would give a grant back to them for what they paid.
That same amount.
Same thing for the Landmark Inn. It would be about $360 for the Landmark Inn and about $10,500.
They would
for the
pay us for
hotel.
quarter 1, and then we turn around and they would apply for the
We
grant.
give them a grant equal to what they paid.
Okay.
Got it in one pocket and out the other.
We're robbing Peter to pay
If they
Peter.
want it, because they have to apply.
And that's only for quarter 1.
For one quarter, only from January 1st to March 31st, 2020.
Good?
I think so.
So we're not bringing anything back.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Second. Okay, all opposed? All right, it passes. Let's go to Mr. Frederickson, who's going to discuss and to let you guys discuss and take appropriate action on pending Alsace Avenue project.
Good afternoon, council. Basically what I'm here for is to give you an update on the Alsace project and why it's been put on hold. So basically with this project, we put it on hold because we were using some of the help from the county, and due to some circumstances, they were unable to help us finish the project. So we did not budget for, when the initial project went out, it was under the threshold of $5,000. So we did not have to do multiple bids. We used a contractor that the county uses, and which give us very good rates, and also have helped us with Mexico Street in the past. So after the county was unable to help us, we looked into getting the quote done through them, and after about 2 weeks or so, we got that quote, and then we wanted to bring that to you. So let me get down to my paper. So listed on the agenda item,
Page 179.
Your number 11.
so on this, the financial impact and source of funding, road material, that hasn't changed. Contract fee for the original milling and chip seal is $4,000. The additional fee for the contractor to finish the job is about $4,952, bringing the total project to $18,132.25. This was something that fits into our budget. I really just bring it to you for let y'all know where we are at, and we are trying to use some internal resources to lower that cost, but overall that is how much it will cost.
I'm muted.
I
lost everybody.
We're here.
Okay.
So,
We'll start with, sorry, I got the wrong kid here. Let's start with discussion, or we have more to do with this?
no ma'am, that's it for me.
Good, David? Okay. Mr. Klein? I can't hear.
Yes ma'am,
I
I'm
didn't hear
finished.
half of it because whoever muted the thing, it muted me as well, so I didn't hear majority of what Devin said.
It's
I can't hear it either, so.
$18,132 is the total cost to do the road.
And where would we be pulling this from?
This comes from Fund 50807/906, which is our street and drainage fund.
It's within budget.
Yes, it's in budget parameters. Basically, I'm bringing it to council because with the circumstances when we originally quoted this, it was below the threshold of $5,000. And then once we had to have the contractor finish, they have, already done some of the work tied into that. So to do that, it was an extra $49.52, bringing the total project cost at most to be $18,132.25.
We're not having to scrape it from anywhere else. It's already there and the funds available.
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
I have a
My
question.
question.
I'm sorry. I have a quick question. This is done through an interlocal agreement. So when we budget for these things, do we budget the total cost, or we budget half of the cost?
So basically, we don't have a long-term planning for projects. So when projects are planned out, we try to look at stuff that we can do inside of our current parameters of the budget. The county's work is not budgeted as it's more of an asset than anything, so we don't really budget or look at that as a number that we have to think about. They don't give us a bill or anything like that. I mean, as long as we take care of the materials, they provide us the expertise and the equipment to do the jobs. And we do not have any set amount of jobs that they will provide us either.
Okay, but this falls under that interlocal agreement,
It did originally.
not something separate.
Pardon?
Okay, never mind. I'll check it out later. It's not important. I'm sorry. Go ahead. District 2?
It's not the interlocal agreement. Mayor, were you asking if this was in the interlocal agreement that he's speaking on
Yeah.
with the county? I believe this is on.
But it's all right. I'll get that. We'll talk about that later. That's okay. So this meeting has got a lot to do yet.
Okay.
District 2?
I have no questions. Thank you.
District 3?
No question.
Does this mean we're not going to do any business with, or the county's not going to do any business with us anymore?
At this point in
We
time,
have to. We have an interlocal agreement. I'm going to go to Commissioner's Court to get this straight.
Well, I'm trying to figure out why they didn't finish the job when they started it.
That's why I'm going to Commissioner's Court.
I would like to say that the county has reached out to myself, and they are wanting to help us and to do projects. We just want to create a clear line of communication and also let everyone know that, they do help us, and they just like we help them with projects, but we need to make sure with these projects that, it doesn't come off that we're misusing resources because, the county doesn't want that bad misinterpretation of them.
All right, then I will clarify that. As I said, I'm going to Commissioner's Court to get this cleared because there's a lot of stuff that isn't clear, which right now is not the time to bring it up. So let's just, you guys treat this as you like. We need to get the street done, but I will be taking it to Commissioner's Court to see what happens.
So what you're saying is,
District 4.
so I'm not finished yet, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
So what we're saying is we want to go ahead and push forward with this and finish this project out instead of trying to talk to the county?
I can't understand you.
I can't help that.
You have to...
Councilman,
You have to ask David, because I wasn't aware that the county, I still have not received the reason why they stopped.
My question is
I have to go through with it, but I will meet with Commissioner's Court to see, why and what happened, because we do have an interlocal agreement. Or it's up to you from here.
pertaining to Councilman Sherhart's question, the reason I brought this is because, yes, I had been trying to work to be able to have the county come back and do this project, but we didn't want this project to linger any longer and to decay the road or the work that has been done. So that's why I brought this. I mean, at most, this is what it will cost to get done. I'm hoping to cut out this cost that was unforeseen and hopefully get them to help us finish the project on goodwill and that we can move forward from this.
That answers my question. Thank you.
District 5 doesn't have any.
District 5.
I have no issues. I support this.
All right. Do I have a motion?
I move we approve an amount not to exceed $18,132.25 to complete the road repairs on Alsace Avenue that were started in late February 2020.
Got a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Thank you for
All
your
right,
time.
motion passes.
Thank you, Devin.
We'll go to discussion and action on quarterly financial and investment. For sake of time, Mr. Vidal, can we get those put together?
Yes, I'm ready to go.
All right. Mr. All yours.
Okay, so for your review is the second quarter financial report for period ending March 31st of 2020. And this is going to cover from January, February, and March revenues and expenditures. So for the second quarter on revenue, on the general fund side, we're sitting at a little over 61%. So we're above that 50%, which is a good thing. It's a positive thing. On the utility side, we're sitting a little over 31%, and the airport fund a little over 34%. So on the general fund side, most of the revenue that was collected was from our property taxes that were due probably back in November, December into January. So we collected all those, which is a good thing. My concern is the sales tax revenue that we're getting in. We received our last, I believe you have a chart that I created just on history on the sales tax, and it shows for the past 3 years, the current year plus 2 years prior to that, what we've collected monthly. And so our highest month this year in 2020 was in February, but that was for taxes that were collected in January. So that was really high. I guess I'm not sure how that happened, but hey, that's a good thing. I'm not complaining about that. So one thing that we certainly are looking at is looking at our sales tax revenue coming in monthly. We're looking at our expenditures. I met with staff weekly in our meetings. We talk about where we can cut back without affecting the day-to-day operations of the city. And so, we're watching our expenditures and we're doing our due diligence and as far as trying to
only purchase what's needed and not because I want it. So we're definitely not doing that. And so our revenue on the general fund, as I said, it's sitting pretty good. On the expenditure side, on the general fund side, we're close to 40%, again, under that 50% threshold. It's a good thing. It's a positive thing, as well as the utility fund, a little over 32%, and the airport fund right almost at 40%. So overall, for the second quarter, we're doing very well. I'm just a little worried on the general fund side, on the sales tax revenue. I'm looking at that monthly as it comes in. And so, other than that, that's all I have on this, the financials for the second quarter.
Are we good? Both financial and investment?
Well, it's a separate item, but investments, for your reviews is the investment report. It requires that I prepare and submit to the city council a report on the second quarter financials for the investments. And so, does anyone have any questions on that?
All right, good?
I move we accept the report as presented. Both reports, the investment report and the financial report.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We can have discussion after.
What? Is that a nay?
No,
No, okay, I can't tell. All right, thank you. We'll go to the next one. This is Mr. Dyer's. I'm not real sure what we can do with this. Is our attorney still online?
Yes, ma'am?
Okay, you can help with this one then. It's discussion and take appropriate action to approve the COVID-19 mitigation instructions for Castroville City with an expected date. I cannot act on this because anything I do has to come through DSHS Region 8 and the county. So the attorney will be able to help the council to see what they can do. So it's all yours. I'll start with, we'll just go in order. District 1.
I don't have anything.
District 2.
I have nothing to add.
District 3.
Nothing to add from here.
4.
Nothing to add.
5.
I just have one question. We spent a month and a half writing this. Why did you ask us to write it if you can't act on it?
I'm very sorry that you misunderstood my email. My email asked you to do a staff, not a mitigation, but a staff transition to work within the boundaries of the COVID disaster. I thought I explained that the emergency management plan several times is something that cannot be, or the orders and amendments, we cannot just simply, I can't. Maybe Cynthia has something that the council can do as policy. I cannot. I believe this wants me to make it an amendment or something, right?
So, my understanding of this, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that this is just basically an operations plan that is just incumbent on the city staff, so that there's some continuity of services and a continuity of the governmental unit. So this is entirely a policy decision that council can make. And
Wonderful.
so, council, y'all are at liberty to discuss and fine tune or accept or not accept, however y'all want to choose to act on this particular item. Is that a correct understanding, Mr. Dyer?
Yes, I think that's, you nailed it on the head. It's just an internal procedural document to help the city plan. It never was intended to go to anybody else other than inside the city staff.
Okay. All right, so do I have a motion? Motion?
I make a motion that we accept the COVID-19 mitigation instructions for Castroville as presented to us.
Okay?
I have a second.
Whatever it is. Huh? Second?
I have a second. Mr. Dyer seconds it.
And there's one problem though on page 4 with recurring city meetings. Emergency meetings, there's some gray areas on that page 4. So I suggest that probably be taken out right now because of the governor's orders and the stipulations for emergency meetings. So this would just be a staff thing with the city administrator on page 4.
Okay. We can remove that part.
All right? Okay.
So you just don't want to have anything in there except the internal stuff for the city?
Well, we can't.
Because right now
it's just for staff.
Yeah, right now it just says that the mayor and the chief do the external meeting and the city administrator does his internal staff meeting, and then he has a teleconference once a week with businesses. So which part would you like us to remove, and we'll take it out?
I can send you the emergency meeting updates as I have done, and I think that would suffice for us actually sitting there telling people what to do, because it wouldn't. The chief and I have to do what happens at that meeting. So we can just give you that, or I'm sure you can get access to it. Leroy can, and we can work from there.
Okay, so we'll delete 2 and 3.
But that could easily be just done by Leroy. We'll give him the updates, and even the chief doesn't need to be there as an emergency manager. If he wants to be there as staff, fine.
No, it was just intended for the city administrator to answer questions from businesses in the city and organizations. Just an information dissemination meeting. We can adjust it.
If you feel comfortable doing that.
You all right with it, Leroy? I'm good. Chief, you all right? Okay, we're okay with that, Mayor.
All right. So we'll leave the, we have a motion, we had a second, I've forgotten.
Yes, we have a motion and a second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, passes. The next one is discussion and appropriate action on a resolution reinforcing city policy on the mayor's interaction with city employees. And I'd like to preface this with, I am terribly, terribly sorry. I did not realize that the members of staff that signed this still felt that I was disrespectful and micromanaging. Because I haven't been able to talk to anybody. I mean, I can't direct, so I just assume that took care of these issues. I'm terribly, terribly sorry. And it would help me a lot if I could talk to the people so I know what I'm doing that I need to change, because I have no intent of I can't micromanage anybody, and I certainly respect everyone. I get frustrated like everyone else because there's 2 sides to every story, but I totally apologize for this. So I think we need to have some sort of, mediation, something. Maybe I can meet with department heads about this and see exactly what we need to do to move forward. The resolution, it's all yours, Mr. Dyer. And Mr. Carey.
I'll defer to Mr. Carey first and let him speak, and then I'll speak after he's done.
Well, our ordinance, clear, ordinance 2009-006, repeated 2016-003, clearly states that all council members and the mayor should defer to the city administrator for any conversation with city employees. I was under the impression that this had been put to rest last December. Apparently, there have been some complaints since then, as recently as Councilman Dyer. When was the last time you heard from somebody?
Last week,
Last week.
just before I submitted this.
So,
May I say something? Is this typical? I'm new with this. I haven't been a mayor before. But is this typical for complaints about a mayor to be put through specific council members without giving a mayor a possibility to talk to the department head? Was this all 9 department heads or 1 or 2? I really I need to take care of this. It just dismayed me. I almost cried when I saw this. I had no idea that any of you felt I was disrespectful, honestly.
Madam-
I want to get this taken care of.
Okay, Madam Mayor, let me try to summarize. This is Mr. Dyer again, and then I'll give you an opportunity to respond. I just would like to say, when the reason this came to the city council, because they addressed it to the city council. We didn't have anything to do with the people who wrote the letter. It was addressed to the city council. So at the time it came in, I was the mayor pro tem, and we reviewed it. I think everybody except Jesse was not present at the meeting. You were sick that meeting. Other council members saw it. We felt it was important to show you the letter, and I believe you did get an opportunity to read the letter on the evening of December the 10th. And it was our hope that when you read the letter that you would self-correct. And so I let it lay. As the mayor pro tem, I figured, let's just wait 60 or 90 days and see if the city staff appears to be satisfied that there's been a difference in the way you work with them. Well, I waited 97 days, and I started getting complaints from members of the city staff who had signed the letter. So I felt compelled to bring it to the city council again, and that's why we authored the resolution. Now, it is not our intention to embarrass you or to offend you in any way. It's my intention, and those of us that discussed this, Mr. Carey and I, to make sure that the city employees know that the city council stands up for them. And we're here to make sure that our city working environment is the best that it can be. We didn't know any other way to address this. So we simply wrote a very simple resolution, and I'm not going to read the resolution, but I want to talk very briefly about the 4 things that we're recommending to you in the resolution. And I'd like to emphasize to you, Madam Mayor, that we are respectfully recommending these things to you. We know that you know them. We know you've read the ordinance, but we feel it's important to let the employees know that we on the council think these are important issues. And the first issue is the issue of interactions between the mayor or members of the city council directly with employees.
Can I interrupt this real fast?
Sure.
Are you talking about the entire council or just you and Mr. Carey?
Well,
You said we.
we haven't voted on it yet, so at this point, Mr. Carey and I are the only 2 members of the council that have discussed this resolution. The other members of the council have received it in the package and have read it, and in a moment we can ask them to give their views if you'd like.
But we don't have there's nothing I can do because I don't know what the complaints were from all these people. And I really will work to stop these horrible things that I'm obviously doing. I'm just terribly dismayed. I don't feel I'm harassed or slander or I'm shocked. And I don't want that brought up that I don't know what to say, but I want a resolution, and I don't feel, I go with your resolution. But to me, it needs to be something between staff and myself, and perhaps we need to get a professional, I don't know, team builder or something, because this is kind of, I don't know how this is going to help things. You just made me even more afraid to do anything because you're giving me a resolution, and I don't even know what I did, honestly. I can assume it's one of those things in the letter they sent me.
Well, I believe we've summarized it in the resolution, and it's just basically 4 issues that the city council wishes to reiterate. I agree with you. Whatever you choose to do and the way you want to move forward, you certainly can work that out. That's your prerogative. But right now, we're trying to deal with a letter that we've been asked to act on, and according to what Mr. Carey and I discussed, this is the way we came up with it. We thought we would give you this resolution, and then we'll vote on it. And if the city council votes to pass it, we'll send it to you. If they vote not to pass it, we'll throw it in the garbage can, but we tried. Okay, so the 4 issues, and I won't go through the details. Issue number 1 is we feel like you should reconsider acting directly with members of the city staff, and that you, like the city council, should try to go through the city administrator to get your issues resolved. Issue number 2, there has been a constant barrage of enmity from you toward the city administrator and the city secretary. And the city council, in the resolution, reminds you that those 2 offices are officers of the city and that they serve at the pleasure of the city council. And if you are unhappy with the performance of the city administrator or the city secretary, you certainly have the right to bring it to the city council and give it a fair hearing, and you would get that. The 3rd issue is an issue about meetings. It's very difficult when the city administrator has a meeting that you're involved in where you're not invited. He is charged with the day-to-day operation of the city, and we're asking you to please refrain from self-inviting yourself to city meetings. If the city administrator feels that your presence is necessary, he can certainly give you an invitation, and you can either accept or decline. And the last issue is the budget. You have constantly belittled the city council and the city staff over the past year. You've said numerous times that the FY 2020 budget was not your budget. You are the city budget officer. It is your responsibility, as you know, to present a budget to the council. We're very concerned because we were supposed to get budget guidance from you to the city administrator in the first week of April. And here it is, the 28th of April. We have no written budget guidance from you to the city staff, and now the city staff is 28 days late in doing the FY21 budget cycle. So we would ask you to please write down or deliver verbally, however you wish to do it, your guidance to the city administrator so they can start on the FY21 budget. And it's certainly your call on how you want to participate in that. You're the budget officer. So that summarizes what the resolution says. I'll stop talking, and Paul and I can answer questions if the other members have them. And that's all I have to say.
I'd like to add that I'm not able to talk to Mr. Vidalis. I don't feel comfortable because I know that I could tell, I had the feeling that he's very angry with me. And I asked for you to mediate, if you remember, twice. I asked you to mediate when I felt that spending on the computer screens and all that kind of thing was not budgeted. And if we should decide if we wanted an in-house IT or just go with ATS. I've also got the mail that when I asked you to be the intermediary about staff. So I'm well aware, and I am trying to find a way to communicate with Mr. Vidalis. As far as the budget, I was not given that only happened after all of the months of money spent on attorneys and time with staff and meetings that finally came to a head, and I was told I was the budget officer. And I have already started a schedule, but quite frankly, I have been afraid because I was expecting some kind of backlash and was going to mediate again. But I don't want this to happen, so I will give you my budget. I have the budget schedule that I have started. I will send it to all of you, and maybe perhaps we can get the first workshop as soon as possible after the 12th when the new people are in. My plan was to start with the improvement project using Mr. Persine also and our financial consultant, because that, to me, a budget is expenditures, and that's what we need to look at. And we've got a huge burden right now that I'm very concerned about. So that was my first plan, is for the continuous improvement projects that we're going to need, not only for the city, but also for the development. So I've already got that ready. And I'm glad you mentioned it. I appreciate it because I'm looking forward to working on the budget with everyone. So if we could perhaps maybe get that done right now and schedule something immediately after the 12th.
Right now, we can't discuss that because it's not on the agenda. We can discuss the resolution. We can ask the other members if they have questions or concerns. The budget is an issue for you to direct your staff what you want them to do, and they'll do it for you. And then when it's ready, you can bring it to the city council and we'll vote on it.
Okay, let's clarify who I can direct, though. I need to go through, as you said, the assistant budget person, who would be Mr. Ridalis. So I need to work with Mr. Ridalis. I've got the schedule, good, and I will give it to him.
That's
How
wonderful.
would you mean?
It is absolutely imperative that you and Mr. Vidalis discuss your desires for the budget so he can take your guidance and implement it with the city staff and get you what you want.
You don't have to like each other, we just got to do
Thank you.
business.
Anybody else chime in?
I'm just saying, we don't have to like each other, but we still got to do business together. I don't know what to say.
Sheena, you have any questions or comments?
No, I agree that we got to put this, lay it to rest. The city has to function. We all have to work together. We're supposed to check our feelings at the door and proceed and work for the betterment of the city. And we're not checking things at the door. I've had people come up to me asking me, what is the deal between everybody not getting along and what have you, comments on social media, all that kind of stuff. So we really need to squelch this. It has to stop now. No more disparaging comments about it, whether you're talking to a buddy or on some kind of social media. It's got to stop. This has been long enough going on that it's got to stop.
Is that all, Sheena?
I agree 100%.
Paul?
The reason I'm here is, and co-sponsored this effort was because it is already policy. What we're proposing in this ordinance is already policy, but it has not been attended to. So making it ordinance gives it another level of enforceability. That's it. It gives us options if we have a problem. And that's it. That's the reason I'm signed on to this.
Jesse?
All right, I agree with this, primarily, number 2, I think that was brought about primarily by constant, seem like going back and forth and criticism on social media. That is, to me, that's what, getting on the social media rather than taking it to the person individually is what brought all this to a head, I believe. And Chief, I tend to agree, I do agree with this resolution.
Todd?
I agree with it also.
Since I wrote this, I feel kind of bad about making a motion, so I'm just going to sit here and let somebody else make a motion.
I just like to clarify something since we've got it going. I'm unaware of any meetings that I just entered. I don't really know that one, but I won't do that ever again unless I'm invited by Mr. Vidal. As far as the directing staff, I am very frustrated, and I will admit that, because I don't want to direct staff, but I get comments from citizens constantly. And they complain, they don't get answers, they complain, and I always forward these to Mr. Vidal, and I always include a note, because I can't just say, here, Mr. Vidal. What I do is I say, I hope this can be resolved, or blah, blah, whatever. And there was never any, that's the only thing I can think of. And I do get totally frustrated because Mr. Vidal responds, why are you involved? And I don't want to be involved in any of this stuff. Believe me, I don't want to. If citizens feel they can come talk to me, and I'll be able to resolve it. And you have no clue how frustrating it is for me, for all the people that tell me that the codes aren't enforced, their streets are crappy. I get them constantly, and I'm frustrated. Yes, I am, because the citizens need a response. So maybe right now, as part of this policy, I will forward all these things to Mr. Vidal, as I have, and he or the staff member he directs can give a response to the citizens. Because even with the streets, I don't know if you guys know what happened, but for some reason there was a mix-up about, they thought they were going to work on the streets, but I understood it was just city streets sweeping or something. So there was a notice for city streets, I'm thinking of striping, sweeping, and then the next day everybody around me got violations that their limbs were whatever. I mean, everybody was on me. So I just let it go because I understand that they went to Ms. Martinez, which is what should happen. So
Yes, and I got involved with Leroy and got that all cleared up.
Okay,
wonderful.
well, again, that's not on the agenda, so.
I think we're getting pretty far off the agenda.
Yeah, we
right
just
here.
need to stick to the resolution, please.
At this time, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the resolution of the city council reinforcing the city policy on mayor's interaction with city employees for the city of Castroville.
I'll second it.
Okay. Madam Mayor, you got a motion and a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Thank you very much, and I will do all I can, and I hope this will satisfy everything, and the citizens also, because they're aware that I get it, I'll send it to Mr. Vidal and Mr. Vidal's direct staff, which has always been the case. And it needs to be clarified, because I did get Commissioner Sitter, who was very angry, said, you don't know how to direct your staff. And I said, Commissioner, I can't. That's something that Mr. Vidal has to do, and you can ask him, because I abide by that. It's a hard job that Mr. Vidal has, because we've got lots of citizens that are tired. They're tired of the streets not being done. They're tired. And now this time gets a lot of time to think, and gives me time to think and even get more frustrated because I get all the comments. But anyway, I think this is a good start. Thank you very much. I promise to do everything I can to change my behavior. And I believe we're good with that one, and we need to do future agenda items. District 1.
Nothing right now.
District 2.
Nothing at this time.
District 3.
Nothing at this time.
District 4?
Nothing at this time, thank you.
District 5?
I have nothing, Madam Mayor. This will be my last meeting, so I just wanted to say thank you for the privilege of serving.
Thank you guys for serving.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All right. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mayor, I have 508.
5:08, Madam Mayor.
Let the record show that the council meeting, April 28th, adjourned at 5:28.
No, 508.
508.
508.
Sorry, thank you. 508. Thank you all.
Thank you.
So we're going to be back here in 50
Aye.
minutes for our regular scheduled meeting?
You'll still get an agenda, but I can. Well, and I'll get, and just, would write your password down, and they may have it at HTS, if you think about when you bring, write your password down, so that you can transfer it out of it, but yeah.
All right.
It'll be
Thank you,
interesting.
Jesse. I'm gonna miss you. Oh, yeah.
Well, you're gonna see him on the 12th, sir.
Okay.
I hope they come back.
I'll miss you then. I'm gonna miss the place.
I've got it stopped for a moment, let me wait. Let me set it up.
That's where we did the